I come from a conservative Christian family. All my family members were / are involved in the church and have church-based jobs. When they met my wife, they loved her and embraced her as their own. We dated for 2 years and discovered she was pregnant after we got engaged. Invitations were already given at the time, and we decided to still have the wedding on date when my wife was 5 months in. My family were furious when they found out my wife was pregnant. They asked if we even still considered having a wedding. I said why not, but they were very upset, especially Mom and Dad, who said they've always been known for their decency and good Christian values, and weren't willing to let this stain their reputation. As in my wife and I getting married while pregnant. They officially dropped out and refused to negotiate, saying it was done and I have only myself to blame for this outcome, and should move the wedding out of town. I was hurt. I tried to change their minds and checked with other members, but my brother said he had no intentions to look like a joke in front of his fellow church members and dropped out. My aunt pretended to be sick and said she may not be able to make it. She's 100% healthy. My cousin said he had business trip and stopped his wife and kids from attending, and my uncle cussed me out, torn the invitation, and kicked me out. I felt terrible with no family members of my own to support me and share my joy at my wedding. I even broke down crying after the ceremony. I haven't spoken to them for months and then got busy with my 4-week-old daughter. My cousin reached out to hand me gifts and well wishes for the birth of my daughter sent from my family. I returned everything. He sat with me on behalf of the family, saying I shouldn't have returned gifts that were from my family who want to see and hopefully be involved in my daughter's life. He said Mom's longing to meet her grandbaby and everyone else is wanting to visit soon to celebrate my daughter's life. I asked him this question. I said, wasn't my daughter the reason why the entire lot of them abandoned my wedding? He just stared grudgingly as I went on about how they treated my daughter as something to be ashamed of and hide. My daughter at some point will ask about the wedding, and I have no intentions on lying to her. He replied saying he guaranteed I got it all wrong, and no matter what goes down between us, I can never deny that my daughter is their granddaughter, / niece / etc., and they're her family. He asked that I arrange for them to visit, but I refused. He kept pressing the idea, but I shut him down. My wife says I should let them come, but I still refused. My mother is disabled due to a neurological disease. She was diagnosed in her late 30s, and I remember that she was sick and needed help. I used to really look up to her as a supermom who could overcome any obstacle. That was until my father died. My father died over 10 years ago when I was still in high school. At that time, my brother and I lived with my parents. I got a job when I was in high school after he left, cleaning the house, mowing the grass, buying food with money from work, paying bills when I could, the minimum wage is low, and cooking dinner for my mom and myself almost every night. My brother was rarely at home, except to sleep or because he needed money. Over the years, my brother has been in and out of prison dozens and dozens of times for everything from drunk driving to drug possession to stealing from our mother to assault. He is currently incarcerated. No one mentions him or expects anything of him, except my mother, who, in violation of a court order for her own protection that she herself asked for, sends him money and speaks to him weekly, as well as sends letters. Back to my father's death, a 7-month bout with illness. Almost 2 years after my father's death, I graduated from high school and went to college out of state. I sent money to my mom when I was in college, and I distinctly remember, for example, using my scholarship I got in December to buy Christmas presents for my mom and brother, because I knew they wouldn't have anything if I won't buy. No one reciprocated, but I did not expect this. To be honest, I didn't care either until it became the norm over the next decade. That very Christmas, I was barely 18 years old, and I was collecting pennies to buy a cheap refrigerator after I returned home for the winter holidays with gifts, only to realize that there was no food in the house. My brother, in a drug-fueled rage, tore down the Christmas tree I had bought and decorated and threatened to kill himself if I didn't give him the money because no one loved him, and that would prove that I cared. It is important to note that even during this time, my mother continued to let my brother, who became a criminal, back to the house. I'll try to skip my college and graduate years, but suffice it to say that I met my current husband and spent less and less time at home. When I was at home or when my husband and I were visiting, it was like this: clean my mom's house, buy mom food, cook for mom, take care of my mom. I was and remain very firm with my mother that I would not let my brother in my life, as he threatened to kill me over the prescription cough syrup, threw me down the stairs and broke down the door to get to me, and some of the money I had at the time. I have no doubt that he will try to harm my child, my husband or me in order to get what he wants. He told me he would find me and he would teach me a lesson for his perception that I wronged him for not giving him money. And I have zero contact with him. I have blocked all numbers that have anything to do with him, including friends he calls from outside the prison. P.S. My mother let him take my number from her phone. I told my mom for years that I didn't want to have my brother in my life until he stopped using drugs for at least 1 year. To date, he is unable to do so. He stole tens of thousands of dollars from her. She always says she won't let him back into her house, but she eventually forgives him and the cycle repeats. The next year, when he was released again, she told me in no uncertain terms that he would not live with her, but admits that she keeps in touch, sends him money, and thinks it is the devil in him that makes him addicted. He will return. I offered to help my mom move closer to me since I live in many states. My husband and I even asked the realtor to come out and start the process of registering our house so we could find a house with space for my mom. My only stipulation was that she not drag my brother into my son's life. She categorically refused. She also refused to go to nursing homes, despite the fact that I went to her of my own free will and received excellent recommendations from her doctors. Now that she had surgery this week, my family is out of the slums. To be honest, I'm outraged by this. I had people who couldn't even send me a mutual Christmas card and told me that I was neglecting my mother, refusing to take time off from work and go to her place to take care of her. They don't care that I don't have days off and that I will most likely lose my job. One even stated that I wouldn't put groceries on my desk. I wouldn't work for such an employer. It's easy to say those words, but say it to my hungry baby. They said, "Who do you think took care of you as a baby?" And frankly, it hurts me. Sometimes you have to learn how to deal with life. You can't just ignore it, because getting on with life means losing your job. Walking away from my toddler in his growing up years and taking care of my mother, I guess? You can probably tell at this point that I'm fed up. I am in a stalemate when literally the only surviving family members tell me to quit my job, my family, my young child, to take care of my mom and help her. They also refuse to give a timeline, saying it will be as long as she needs it. I am expected to take care of her 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no questions asked. I also feel strongly that they resent my mother for asking them to do me a service. Even though I have explained many times that I offered her to stay with us and have the operation here, at no cost to her, mind you. And she refused. In response, they tell me that she has the right to be close to her friends. I also tried to explain that by bowing to her at every call. They give her an opportunity, but they don't want to hear it. They don't seem to hear me when I try to explain that. For example, helping her get out of the physical therapy room a week and a half before her doctor's recommendation gives her an opportunity, and ultimately hurts her independence. She is used to everyone doing everything for her. For example, during the last visit she was very upset that I did not take her to Walmart, because she had to go there almost before the baby went to bed. It was not emergency. She wanted to look around. My mother, in all this confusion, has taken the position that although she doesn't want me to lose my job, a good daughter should take care of her mother. Frankly, I am very hostile to this statement, because my mother did not call me on my birthday before my father died. I tried to build some kind of relationship with my son. I always try to chat with them or talk on the phone. And in the last 12 years I can count on the fingers of one hand how many times she called me just to tell me about me, or my son, or ask how we are doing. If she does call, there is always an ulterior motive, money for my brother or for her, because she gave my brother everything. I'm on the edge. I can't work full-time, take care of my family, and expect to hear several times a week how bad a person I am for refusing to give up everything I've worked so hard to take care of mine, mother. No matter what, I love my mom. My husband and his family saw it unfold, and several people remarked, "Why are you even trying? Meaning trying to schedule calls so she can talk / see my son. I invited her to my house earlier this month, scheduled plane tickets, airport assistance, etc. Just to watch her play on her phone or spend time playing with the dog instead of reading a book to my little one who just wanted her attention. Today, as if the last straw was needed, I called to check on her and she stated that she was going home against the doctor's orders because her dog needed her, because the dog was sick. First, he has a very minor skin condition that is almost 100% cured thanks to her friend giving him a prescribed ointment. Secondly, my little one got sick this week, meaning he didn't go to kindergarten for 3 days. And even after I told her about it, she never called to find out how he was. Just like she never called to check on him when he came down with the flu last year, or when he had a mysterious week and a half illness earlier this year that resulted in 4 doctor visits and a temperature of 104 degrees. I can't take it anymore. I am literally writing this as a last resort. My husband tells me not to talk to anyone, that's the whole family I have left except for one paternal aunt. Because he sees me cry when hurtful comments and guilt come into play. He sees me trying to hide it from my child. But then I feel like I'm giving them what they want, right? Look at little Miss Potato, such a bad person and so inept at dealing with life. She just chose to ignore us all. But I can't defend myself all day in front of extended family members whom I've seen for over 10 years. And in some cases over 2 decades. Nothing I say will ever be good enough. I was told in no uncertain terms that I was a terrible person because I refused to leave my husband and young child and move across the county to take care of my mother. Postscript, I am not subject to the FMLA. My employer is not large enough and there is no comparable law in my state. I have 1 day of vacation left due to my son getting sick earlier this year. My husband gets almost 3 times as many days off, so took many more days to take care of him. In general, I do not want to lose my job or look for another one. It's a good job, it's just limited to a small company. She refused to move in with me. Either my husband and I are building a mother-in-law, or we are moving to a bigger house. Any aid agency or nursing home. She hesitates about allowing housework, but contradicts herself on the matter, telling me that Susie can help her if she needs anything, or that she has friends she can call, or, more often than not, she does well and can take care of herself. She wants help, but only when she wants it and only on her own terms. She told me that she would not end her relationship with my brother. I managed to get her to agree to a consultation after my brother attacked her, stole her car and pawned all her appliances. She moved to a domestic violence shelter but declined to press charges. This happened when I was 7 months pregnant, and when I refused to drive 20+ hours in a car. I was told essentially the same thing that I am being accused of now. She justifies my brother's behavior. He hooked up with the devil and he can't leave him. I've talked to the Adult Protective Services counselors and it all comes down to the fact that she's an adult. She can make her own decisions. Her doctors, although they seem to agree that she may need help taking care of herself, refuse to state that she is unable to take care of herself. I've been married to my wife for 10 years and we're a mixed-race couple. I'm Asian and she's Caucasian. I've gotten along with her family, MIL, BIL, SIL, but I always felt like her father-in-law and other sister-in-law, Sarah, never liked me. I'm a professionally trained chef with 15+ years of experience and I work at a high-end Chinese restaurant, a spin-off of a popular one in Beijing, in a large US city. My crew and I have won several awards, and I've been explicitly told I'll be the next executive chef. Sarah is also a professionally trained chef and works at a popular upscale French restaurant in the city. She constantly brags about it and, no joke, compares herself out loud to Ramsay and Bourdain. Whenever I'm at my mother-in-law and FIL's house and helping out in the kitchen, Sarah is always criticizing everything I do. Whether it's chopping, braising, marinating, etc., she always butts in with comments like, I think you should actually do X like this. I've been patient for my wife and sidestepping those comments, saying things like, thanks, but I think I'll stick to the way I do it. Things came to a head 2 weeks ago when my wife, FIL, MIL, and I were in her parents' kitchen prepping dinner for my MIL's birthday. We were running a bit behind, so things were heated, which I kind of like because it reminded me of work. And that's when Sarah walked in. She took one look at what I was doing, scoffed, and said something like, "Oh wow, okay, so that's not the right way of doing things." It hit a nerve and I pretty sternly told her to stop criticizing my cooking and that I'm also a chef like her. She laughed and said, "Making kung pao chicken at some Chinese restaurant doesn't count." The kitchen went silent, father-in-law snorted / chuckled, and my mother-in-law yelled, "Sarah, what is wrong with you?" I stopped what I was doing, swore at her and called her a racist piece of shit, apologized to my mother-in-law for not being able to stay, and left for home with my wife. Apparently this caused a massive fight after we left, with my MIL / BIL / other sister-in-law taking my side and my FIL / Sarah saying it was a joke but kind of true and that I was being too sensitive. The extended family somehow got wind of this and now everyone is arguing and taking sides, with my wife even getting texts from some her cousins apologizing for Sarah's behavior. Despite being on my side, my wife is begging me to apologize so that the fighting will stop, but I refuse to because Sarah and her blatant racism. I'm a chef working at upscale Chinese resto, my sister-in-law is a chef at upscale French resto. She's critical of my cooking skills and has now called it making kung pao chicken at a Chinese restaurant. Family at war, wife begging me to apologize. My wife has also informed me that now Sarah may be in trouble at work and she's blaming me for it. Apparently one of her co-workers heard her rant about what happened and reported it to management. So it looks like one of my wife's cousins found this post and put it on Sarah's Facebook wall going, "This is you, right?" Her FB friends are starting to comment with things like, "If this is you, Sarah, then I'm disappointed. I think Sarah's still at work, shit might be hitting the fan soon," and now my wife is pissed too. My wife got a call from Asael. From wife's paraphrasing, Sarah started screaming / crying at her the moment my wife picked up and said that she just got demoted because of her Asian slur husband. Apparently some of her co-workers have her on FB and showed the post to management, which combined with her earlier rant, double whammied her back to being a line cook and now she might get fired. My wife solidly on my side after taking the verbal abuse from Sarah. My brother lost his job along with all his savings several months ago, and soon after he asked me if it would be okay if he and his wife stayed with me until they could afford their own place again. I hesitated at first, considering I only have a one-bedroom apartment, but according to them they had no other options, so of course I invited them over and bought a blow-up mattress for the living room. For the first month things were manageable, although admittedly cramped. Then my brother told me that sleeping on the mattress was giving him back pains. So he asked if he could buy a small double bed for the living room. The living room is by far the biggest room I have, so I told him that would be fine as long as there was still room for my couch, TV, bookshelves. The living room is also connected to my kitchen in an open plan style. So I reminded my brother to leave walking space around the bed. It's now been 2 months and things have gotten a lot worse. When they first moved in, I would still use the living room every day to unwind on the couch after work. Now whenever I go in, there's a strange vibe like I'm intruding. My brother and his wife are often sitting in bed together when I go in. I always knock and stare at me pointedly until I leave. Sometimes when I sit down they will directly ask me for some alone time and say they would like the room to themselves. This came to a head yesterday when my sister-in-law messaged me with a timetable she'd made of when it would be a good time for me to use the living room. The timetable basically says that they will allow me into the room for an hour each evening, plus 20 minutes around meal times. I basically shut her down instantly and told her there was no way I'd be following the timetable since in the end it's my apartment. She sent me back a huge message with a dozen paragraphs about how my constant presence was ruining her marriage with my brother and they feel like they have no privacy. I tried to talk this over with my brother that night, but when I got home neither my brother / SIL were talking to me. So he's clearly just as pissed. Today an Amazon parcel arrived for my brother with a lock for the living room door, which I told him there's absolutely no way I will allow him to install. My brother says I'm creepy for wanting constant access to where they sleep and he's insisting on installing the lock anyway.